thank you for being here tonight. Today's candidate forum has been brought to you by the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce, whose mission is to give value to our members and the community through innovation, bold leadership, and programs that develop the business climate. We appreciate the partnership with the Sherwood High School Youth and Government. If you are a board member for the Sherwood Chamber, can you just kind of raise your hand? Thank you so much for being here tonight and helping support the Chamber. I'd like to introduce you to David Buswell, our President-elect of the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce, and ask him to introduce the rest of the evening for us.
Thank you, Lana, and thank you all for being here tonight in attendance and those of you watching at home. We are hosting this forum to help educate business owners, community members, and leaders on candidate positions and measures in regards to critical business and economic issues. We are fortunate to have Tom Ogden of Knipe Realty here and Matthew Shantine of the Sherwood High School Youth and Government to moderate tonight's forum. Matthew is in his third year at the Sherwood High School Youth and Government, the club that writes bills and brings to youth legislation to mock up in the Salem, Oregon legislature. This is Matthew's second year being a part of this forum. Thank you, Matthew. Tom Ogden has lived in Sherwood for 20 years and is proud to call Sherwood home. Tom, or Tommy as his friends call him, has an extensive background in radio, public relations, and marketing in Portland, and has worked for Fortune 500 companies including Enron and CBS Radio. For the last 10 years, he has built a thriving real estate career as a real estate broker at Knipe Realty Northwest with his own brand, Tommy Boy Homes. You might have heard him with his famous business partner, Scott Tom, as together they provide all the sound for crews in Sherwood. It is my pleasure to introduce and please welcome Tom Ogden and Matthew Shantine.
Good evening, everybody. We appreciate the willingness this evening of the candidates to be here this evening for this open forum. A couple of notes we'd like to share with you. We have a limited time this evening to address questions, so our request to you is refrain from applause during the forum so that the candidates have as much time to be heard when asked their questions. A brief overview of the process for everyone. We have flipped a coin earlier this evening to determine the order in which our speakers will address you. A timekeeper will signal respondents with how much time they have remaining in their allotted time. We will politely but effectively use a buzzer signal speaker to end comments when time is up. Candidates for the Sherwood City Council have been offered 3 minutes to introduce themselves. So let's begin. City Councilor Tim Rosner and candidate, please introduce yourself.
That's you. I guess that's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Rosner. I'm running for City Council. But before I start, I want to thank the Chamber for setting this up tonight and the Sherwood Youth and Government program as well. This is a really great opportunity. I'm really excited about this particular forum because I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me, but I think this is the first time we've live televised a forum like this. So not only do you get to enjoy hearing us talk, but anyone else out there who wants to tune in can hear this too, which I think is great. And I think it really, for me, goes to a core value that I have in terms of how I think about my role as an elected official. My job is to understand what the community wants. My job is to reach out in as many ways as I can to understand what your hopes, desires, and aspirations for our great city are. Then take that information and let it inform my decision-making process and how we move forward. That's job one. It's not my job to say, hey, this is what we need to do. It's my job to listen and then help you guys achieve those goals. So that's super important for me. And the way I like to sum that up is I really talk about it in terms of being a servant leader. Some of you may have heard that term before, but it's really about being a servant first and being a leader second. Don't want to be a boss. We've had enough of that. My job is to listen to you guys and lead. A little bit about my experience. I've come to this through kind of an unusual route. I spent most of my career selling services and software products to cities all across the United States. When we sold the company, we had about 900 cities and counties in 37 states. We sold finance systems, payroll systems, HR systems, And it gave me a unique opportunity to kind of sample how other organizations do things and how they approach problems. I also got to spend a lot of time helping those organizations solve problems. So for me, I may not have the experience as an elected, but I do have a lot of experience with other communities and helping them solve their problems. And I think I can bring a unique perspective to the job. And I think that perspective, frankly, balances out a great council that we have today. And I'm really looking forward to working with the council moving forward. Last thing I'll say is Russell and I are both running unopposed. Makes this a little bit easier, but I do think it's important that we talk to you. We were appointed to fill the seats that were vacated by the recall back in October. And in my mind, it's not official until people take their pencil and vote for me to be on this council. So in that regards, I'm excited about this election and excited about working with the community as we move forward. Thank you.
Russell Griffin, City Councilor and candidate. Would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. Again, as Tim mentioned, thanks to the Chamber of Commerce and the student from the high school that's here. I think that's great. And like Tim, I want to start in reverse order. Like Tim, I think it's great to have a varied set of skill sets on the council. Tim and I already talked about being in the back of the room, and I would handle the song and dance and the showy stuff. And if there was a technical question that involved a number, I would turn it over to Tim. But you know, that's perfect. It's such a great balance, and I think having a lot of varied personalities, you know, on the council helps us see things from all different angles. I would like to agree with what Tim said. You know, I felt the same way. Being appointed, losing to Councillor Browse, being off the council for 2 hours, being reappointed 2 hours later, I'm feeling a little bit, and I'm not joking, when the judge stood up to swear me in the second time, he did a double take on my face and looked around like, wait, haven't I already done you once? So I am feeling a little bit, you know, I feel very grateful that I have been appointed, but I feel like Tim does. I think that let the citizens vote, you know, let your vote be known. And we are running unopposed, and we're grateful for that. But at the same time, it's a great time to be in Sherwood, so it's great to be on the council. It's great to be involved at the council at this time when things are calming down and we really have the tires hitting the road and we are getting a lot of things done. At least I feel like we're trying to get a lot of things done. My background shortly is we moved here 21 years ago. My kids have all gone through high school. I have a sophomore there right now. We have had a business in Old Town for years. We live in Old Town. My background hasn't been as heavily business oriented as Tim's has been, but I'm a technical trainer, so I get to deal with a lot of individuals all the time. And one of the great activities that I have found in the city of Sherwood has been involved with the arts. So that's kind of where I like to come from. And that includes the summer musicals. And I was around when we started the Voices for Performing Arts. I was around when we started Sherwood Foundation for the Arts. I was here when we did the first musical in Stella Olson, when we didn't have the backdrop. And we did Once on This Island, you know, and I think all of these things have helped to make Sherwood a really great place to live, a very a varied place to live, whether it's sports, whether it's culture, or whether, you know, whatever it might be. So anyway, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I look forward to answering some questions. Thank you.
So we will start with you, Councilor Griffin. How will you address your duties as councilor if faced with decisions on matters that may publicly or politically be contentious?
I think when you have to make a decision on anything, not everybody in the room, not everybody in the city is going to agree. Right off the bat, you have to understand that. And I think, at least I take my role as I rely heavily on staff to provide us with accurate information about whatever the issue is. And then somebody emailed me recently and said, are you left? Are you right? And I said, I don't think I'm either. I want to look at every issue individually and weigh everything on the merits of the facts, and then try and figure out now what's best for the citizens. What do the citizens want? Where is the city going? What's our focus? And I feel it's important to make what I believe is the right decision. And then I welcome anybody to email or call or stop me in. I talk to people in Walmart all the time. They always find me in the candy aisle. I don't know how that happens. They say, hey, what's the deal with, and I'll spend 20 minutes talking with them at the store. I welcome that because then I can say, here's why I voted. Here's some things that you might not know about that issue, which would help you come maybe to the same understanding. And I can absolutely be agreeable in disagreeing with somebody else. So I can totally do that. Thank you.
I'll throw the same question to you, Councilor Rosner. How will you address your duties as councilor if faced with the decisions on matters that may be publicly or politically contentious?
It's a good question. I think I agree a lot with what Councilor Griffin just said. I think it's really important. We have some great staff, and they provide us a lot of great information that's very helpful as we look at the decision-making process. But I'll go back to what I said in my opening statement. It's also really important that I understand, how the community feels about that issue, and most importantly, that's a two-way street. Okay, part of it may be educating the community on some of those details and what are the factors involved in making a decision, either left or right or up or down. And once, I feel like we've gotten some good information out there and gotten really good feedback from the community on a contentious issue like that, then it's time to sit back, reflect, partner with the great people on our council to come to a decision. But it's really important to have community engagement on those decisions so they feel like they're involved. And like Councilor Griffin, I'm always willing to sit down with anyone, have a cup of coffee, interact with them old school, at the coffee shop, or interact, through other means, through polls and social media and other technologies in ways that are compatible with people's busy lifestyles.
Thank you. Before we ask the candidates another question, and I hand it over to Matthew, if you've not already filled out your community question, this is your for questions for the mayoral race. Please do so at this time.
Okay, so this second question will be first directed to Councilor Rosner and then to Councilor Griffin. So what do you feel are the biggest challenges for City Council this year?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think we have some key decisions ahead of us going into this year. A big one that's on my mind right now is the question of the Sherwood West expansion. As most of you know, we sent a letter to Metro just kind of advising them of our intent to make an ask in April to expand the urban growth boundary. And I think we need to look really closely at that. The current ask that we put out there is about 600 acres. And if you do the math, that could be about 5,000 more homes in our city. So we need to ask ourselves, are we ready for that type of growth? Is this something that we're ready to do at this point in time? Again, engage the community like I talked about before. But I think that's one of the bigger questions in front of us that's going to have long-term ramifications for the city that we need to be very careful about.
And then again, back over to Councilor Griffin. What do you feel are the biggest challenges for City Council this year?
I agree with Councilor Rosner on this. I think that's one of our major issues because that's the one that's sort of right in front of us. I think we're all excited that the new high school is going to come in, and hopefully that will continue to be a smooth process. What a big task that is, what a big job that is. And I think as a community, we want to be proud of our new high school. We want it to be safe. We want it to be accessible. We want it to be, something that is going to be great for years and years. And so getting all of that organized can be complicated. As a planning commissioner for several years, we worked on Sherwood West back in the initial phases. And putting a high school in the middle of that has really changed things up a little bit. So I feel like we need to relook at what we're doing. I think we need to think about that ask. I think we need to figure out, what's the best solution for the city. So I think growth is definitely a potential problem, not problem, but a potential item that we have to think about. Working with the school district to make sure it's safe for our kids to get to the high school on a continuing basis. Those kinds of things. Traffic, those kinds of issues, I think. Thank you.
City Councilors, thank you for taking the time to lead off this forum this evening. At this time, you guys can take seats here in the front row, and we'll have our two mayoral candidates make their way up to take their place up here in front of all.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our candidates for mayor, Keith Mays and Sean Garland. Based on our coin toss that was administered prior to the voters forum opening tonight, candidate for mayor Keith Mays will begin here momentarily. Once the guys get situated with their seats, right? Awesome. We'll begin with candidate for mayor Keith Mays with 3 minutes to introduce yourself, sir.
I feel compelled to serve again and help continue what Mayor Weislocal has started with this new group of counselors and restoring the faith in our local government. Part of that effort I've detailed in my pledge on my website, keithmays.com. You want to take a look. But it's about returning to the practice of respecting each other, listening to each other, listening and working with the community. We can continue to be the perfect. Did you not hear me before? Perfect place. So.
I swear I'm not working your mic.
Perfect place to raise kids, grandkids, and grow thriving businesses. In May, the City Council will decide if the Sherwood Urban EGB expansion request for up to 600 acres should be submitted to Metro for approval. If elected, I'll be one vote against sending such a request to Metro this year. We need to finish the $400,000 2-year comprehensive plan update and understand what groups in the community and various community groups want the future to look like. So I want to thank so many in the community for their support and endorsement, especially Mayor Lee Weislocal, former Mayor Cottle, and so many councilors and community leaders that I have served in the past. Thank you.
I'm glad your mic works now. Now we will hear from candidate for mayor, Mr. Sean Garland.
Thank you. I'd also like to start off with some thanks here. I'd like to thank Keith, actually, for the great campaign that he's run so far. I think we can all agree that this has been one of the more civil mayoral campaigns that we've seen in the last couple of years, which I think is a great feeling for us all moving forward. I want to thank Russell and Tim, Councilors Rosner and Councilors Griffin, for their service and since stepping up to be appointed, running for office, and I do encourage everybody to please do vote for them in the election as well. I want to thank everybody in the audience for attending tonight. I'm kind of speaking to the choir here, but thank you for, your civic duty here, for showing up, getting involved. We've gotten a lot of people involved over the last half year, so I really appreciate all you guys showing up. So many of you know me as currently the City Council President. I was elected City Council President in October of 2017 and was unanimously reelected Council President by our current council in January. Speaking about 2017, we had a good year in 2017. It was a difficult year. There was a difficult process with the YMCA, which I thought was difficult to navigate, and I think it could have gone smoother. But I think in the end, we were able to negotiate a fair contract with what I think is the best partner for the citizens. And the good side effect to that process was that it encouraged a lot of citizens to get involved in our community, which I think has brought us, Councilor Rosner, for example, and many others who stepped up and have contacted me throughout that time to get involved. So I really appreciate that. We were able to work with the school district to negotiate the sale of the land that's going to hopefully help move that high school along in 2020. We were also able to work with some various groups in the region to get us some funding for some grants. So it was a good year. It might not have looked like it on film, but it really was. 2018, we've had a great year so far, and it's only February. We were able to approve an IGA for some police body cams, authorize the city to apply for the grant for the skate park, move forward with speed enforcement cameras on 99W to help keep people safe there. And we formed a new comprehensive plan update citizen committee in January to help move along our comprehensive plan update, which, as Keith had mentioned earlier, is very important to us. So, and I just want to be clear on this. I'm touting these things that happened. I didn't do all those by myself. Those were done by our city staff, our city council. We all work together on that, and that's what I'd like to do as mayor, is to move forward working together as a group, keep this positive attitude that we've got going on. I think it's really important, and I know my time's running out, and I promised my daughters that they said that the hot lunches in the schools weren't really all that great, so as mayor, I'd like to see what I can do about improving the hot lunches in our schools. So, thank you.
Duly noted, I think. Oh, that's great. Candidate for Mayor Garland, we'll begin with you. As the city of Sherwood continues to grow, and we are growing quickly, what steps are you prepared to take as mayor in this short term to ensure that Sherwood is on a path for responsible growth in both the residential and business environments? And what challenges do you feel the city faces in this regard?
Sure. So what we heard about before, obviously, is Sherwood West, and along with that, the UGB expansion that we'll be looking at as a council very shortly. And I think when it comes to growth, I know that it's not the most popular idea in the city for growth. And there's a lot of people that want to keep things the way they are. They feel like perhaps, with the Brookman annexation and the votes that went against that 3 times, the city spoke loud and clear, but unfortunately the Senate Bill 1573, if I recall correctly, really kind of took that out of our hands. So what I like to look at for the Sherwood West and the UGB expansion is I think that we have the opportunity to plan to get ahead of that. We've had a Sherwood West Citizens Committee that was formed and did a lot of work previously on that. And what I'd like to see, if we are going to grow in that area, is that we get out ahead of that and plan and work with the citizens to understand what it is they're looking for. Because we are looking at running out of housing for the city. Sherwood is a great place to live. People want to live here, and that's just a fact. So we have to make sure that we have a place for them to live. And we're going to run out of housing for those folks within the next, I think it's 4 to 10 years. So planning that expansion for Sherwood West, making sure that we have affordable housing for those people who want to live here, and not only just some of the high-end housing that we have here, but also for some of the other folks families, single families, and the aging population that we have here as well. I'd like to see some more housing here, single story housing for people who are maybe moving out of the traditional family unit housing. So that's what I'd like to see for the growth in Sherwood. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate for Mayor Mays, same question to you. As the city of Sherwood continues to grow, what steps are you prepared to take as mayor in this short term to ensure that Sherwood's on a path for very responsible growth in the residential and business environments? And also, what challenges do you feel the city faces in this regard?
Thanks, Tom. Great question. It is a big decision, the Sherwood West UGB ask or not, and I have already stated that I'm on the side of voting no and looking at 2021, 2024. It's important, we're spending all this money doing this big outreach to the community to understand what they want our community to look like when we grow up. And before you really start going down that path to say we want 600 acres or some number below that, when I've talked with folks in the region, talked with folks in the community, there's just not the support. Because of the Brookman experience, they're saying pause, let's wait, let's do this comprehensive plan update. It's a very high density proposal if we go down that road. Up to 15,000 people would be living in there if we did 600 acres at the density that's suggested. Nothing's happened in Brookman. Let's pause. Let's find out what the community wants and then look at what we should do. On the business side, we need to spend a little more effort looking at promoting commercial and industrial development to improve our tax base. We are a bedroom community with bedroom communities. With the Oregon tax system, a home does not pay for the services that they receive. So you must counter that with commercial and industrial development, and we're upside down still. So we need to make sure that we aggressively promote and encourage commercial and industrial development, using our community resources, working with our Chamber of Commerce, working with our Urban Renewal Board, working with other groups in our community to get a plan to help advocate the commercial and industrial growth. Work with those same groups to also make sure that we're a good place to do business with, make sure that we're good to work with in the planning department, good to work with all the way around. Thank you.
All right, so now we will move into question 2. Question 2 will be directed to Mr. Mays first and then to Mr. Garland. Where do you stand on Sherwood citizens' recent vote against allowing recreational marijuana sales, and do you believe that Sherwood would benefit from its potential if it were eventually allowed?
Thank you for the question, Matthew. Thank you for the question, Matthew. I think the community spoke loud and clear really the first time around, it is absolutely the right of the community to get a petition and ask the community to reconsider it. The result I expected, a year later. I appreciate the argument and it's used other places, but if we're looking for tax revenue, there's other ways that we can do it, and we can as a community. It is true that if the vote had been different and it was brought in, then yeah, there would have been some tax revenue to the general fund, but I have zero interest in revisiting it for a third time, from my position as a citizen or if I become an elected official.
And moving back to Mr. Garland, where do you stand on Sherwood citizens' recent vote allowing recreational marijuana sales, and do you believe that Sherwood would benefit from its potential if it were eventually allowed?
Sure. I think my stance on this one is fairly well known, but I'll kind of touch on it just briefly here. I certainly advocated for allowing or for removing the ban on recreational sales, and a lot of that really was due to the anticipated tax revenues that we would receive from that, not only the state taxes, but also from the city taxes that would be available. And I think a good example of some of the things that we could have done with that money is just recently we got a one-time payout of $57,000 from the state of Oregon on some recreational marijuana taxes. And what we did in passing a recent supplemental budget was we allocated $47,000 of that to the body cams for our police officers to help keep them safe. And we took $10,000 of that and donated that to the Justice Center of Hillsborough, which is a facility that aids and helps victims of domestic abuse. So that money we are taking that money from the recreational marijuana and using it for good causes. So, as Keith had said, with expenses, you have to have, if you have ongoing expenses, you have to have ongoing revenues. So I would have liked to have seen that ongoing revenues from the recreational marijuana taxes go towards perhaps an additional school resource officer for our schools to help keep them safe. I thought that would have been a great use of that money. But again, the citizens have spoken on that. They voted against allowing recreational marijuana sales in the city. I'm fine with that. I'm not going to, as councilor or as mayor, push any additional agenda on that. That's certainly up to the citizens if they would like to bring a new petition on that, or anybody else. If they want to move that forward, that's certainly up to them. But to allay any fears that anybody might have, I'm not planning on becoming a tyrant king and overturning any bans on recreational sales. So thanks.
We'll come back to you, candidate for Mayor Garland. In the past 18 months, as many of us know, the city of Sherwood has become deeply divided over the contract renewal process of the Sherwood recreational facility known as the YMCA. It's led to recall efforts and eventual resignations for several seats in City Hall. Kind of gave us a little bit of a special reason to have this special election. It left kind of a black eye on the community. How do you propose as mayor the city handle such affairs in the future so that the city of Sherwood is able to discuss and decide in public manners, fairly and openly, since everyone really relies on the governmental process to do it correctly? In other words, how would you propose the city handle potentially contentious issues in a way that brings the community together for an open discussion about things like that?
Sure, it's a great question. So, yeah, clearly the YMCA issue, as I kind of alluded to in my opening speech, I think it could have been handled better. And I think, as a council and even with combinations with our city staff as well, we had kind of a lessons learned discussion on that in a work session. And I think, one of the areas that became a challenge for us, and it was a difficult issue, is that the city council was put in a position to not only score the candidates, but then also be voting for the candidates. So what I'd like to see going forward in any type of RF3 process like that in the future would be to have a separation of that. It is, perhaps even have a citizen community or committee do the scoring of candidates if we have a similar situation, and then really bring that to the council to vote on the results of that. So we have that separation, because I think some of the angst that came out from that was some questions about the scoring, and then impartiality. I don't want to dredge that up too much, but like I kind of alluded to before, though, I think there was the positive benefit of the outcome of that, is that it did get our citizens involved. It was mentioned during that time, council received about 500 emails from citizens, and I started serving on council in January of 2017. Probably up until that point of the YMCA, I probably received 10 emails. So it was really great to see people get involved and passionate about it too, and really present not only their opinions on it, but we had a lot of people that really dug deep into the issues of the city, and I want to keep that going. I've been very active in encouraging people who reached out to us to take it a step farther, join some committees, and I referred to earlier the Comprehensive Plan Update Citizen Committee that was just formed in January. A lot of those people that are on that committee were the people who got very active when the YMCA came out. So that, I think, is what I'd like to do, is to keep people active and keep them involved, so we do have the voices of the citizens speaking to the council, not just the council speaking to the citizens.
Candidate for Mayor Mays, same question. You've seen the past 18 months, it's been deeply divided over the contract renewal process for the Sherwood recreational facility. It led to recall efforts and resignations of several seats in City Hall, and is the reason for the special election coming up in a couple weeks. How do you propose as mayor the city handle such affairs in the future so that it's not such a big black eye on the city matters, basically fairly and openly, and rely on the governmental process established? In other words, how would you propose the city handle these potentially contentious issues in a way that brings the community together for this open discussion?
Thanks. A great question. Yes, an unfortunate chunk of the year raised a lot of emotion and contention in the community. Definitely got involvement. It boils down to trying to follow best practices of what other communities do on issues, and the structure of the process, was flawed out of the gate, as Sean alluded to, and that made it very hard on everybody. The net result was good when people were quit and thrown in office and but a lot of it unnecessary angst. But following best practices for the city staff, so the city attorney, the city manager, when asked to ensure that they're recommending the best course of action for a community outreach, to get as many people in the community involved, to create layers of review. We have wonderful citizen advisory committees that do great work, love to get down into the nitty-gritty detail of a subject that, depending upon the committee, well, let's be honest, not everybody loves to pour over X subject. Not everybody's built to be on the planning commission. Not everybody's built to be on the budget committee. But some people, they're wired for it, and they are awesome, and they will sit through long meetings and enjoy the minutia and submit wonderful recommendations and feedback to the community. So outreach, best possible practice, and it will help a great deal. Transparency and openness.
We've got our community question from some of our guests and folks from in and around the city, and the question is, and we'll start with you, Mr. Mays. Please describe specifically how you will find ways to rebalance city resources towards a growing senior population. How will you educate and involve Sherwood citizens in the creative and substantive ways in this process moving forward?
Great question. When I was first involved in the community, our senior center was operated by Friends of the Senior Center with support of the city and support of the county through annual grants. Unfortunately, the county made a change, as most know, but if you don't, they gave a contract to Loaves and Fishes, the Meals on Wheels not-for-profit, and they took over everything, and everything changed, and we had a rough few years. And then last year, they up and told us that they were taking their money and people and leaving. So at this point, the city's been running it, and we need to. And the staff's been doing a good job. It's picking up the pieces. They left and took everything with them. All the data of the seniors. It was incredibly unfortunate. We need to engage our senior community. Support the Friends of the Senior Center to get them stronger and hopefully involved again like before. Consider even in getting the YMCA involved to see if we could get another great community resource to help and just make it thrive. Our seniors are awesome. They're complicated, they're demanding, but they're loving and helpful to each other and to our community. And we should be there to help them in any way we can and have the Senior Center thrive. And have the city government be supportive, but let the seniors kind of take over and tell us what they want. And get the money back from Washington County. that really torqued me.
All right, so candidate for mayor, Mr. Garland, please describe specifically how you will find ways to rebalance some of our city resources towards our growing senior population. How you educate and involve the Sherwood citizens in that creative process along the way.
Sure. So our senior center is obviously kind of a jewel of our community, but I think it's underserved in some of our marketing and some of our public communication to the community. I don't know that a lot of people understand truly what that relationship that we have is from a city standpoint and the senior center. I don't know if people know truly what our involvement is. And I think that's probably partly the city's fault. And by the city, I mean us as well. So we are listening to, what they're having to say. We actually had the group, Our Indivisible Revolution Sherwood, came and spoke at, I think it was our last meeting. It was either February 20th or February 6th. I apologize for not remembering exactly. They did came and they spoke very passionately to us here about what they wanted to see, and that was a great start. And I'd like to see them get involved in the community, and now we need to listen to what they're saying. And so some of the concerns that they had, rightfully so, and when you use the word balance, this kind of triggered this in my mind, is we're talking now a lot about a skate park and getting a grant and funding for a skate park. And traditionally, when you think of a skate park, you think of kids, not discounting all the adults who like to skate. I know you're out there too. But we can't focus strictly on the skate park and forget about the senior center just because maybe it's not as popular, it's not the now thing. So we need to make sure that we're listening to them, make sure that we're reaching out to them. And I do want to promote the senior center. We have it's really heavily run by volunteers. We're working on the staffing for the senior center. We recognized in the first year of operating it that we weren't staffed correctly. So just recently we looked at adding an additional staff member to the senior center to help address some of the issues that are being brought to us at the city to say that, they need some more help here. So, I would like to see us be more active in listening, communicating, and understanding what the needs are, because we're new to this still, really, with operating that. So we need to be listening right now.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. We have time, so we're going to kind of follow up on a question regarding growth, and I'll start with you, Mr. Garland, first. As the city of Sherwood continues to grow and expand, how do you see the UGB changing? What challenges does that represent? And lastly, what impact does it have, positive and negative? And do you see that, how's it going to affect us moving forward? We've had a lot of discussion about it, but we'd like you guys to dig a little deeper on that.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So yeah, the UGB is something that, we've been talking about obviously in the city for a while, and it's been talked about a little bit tonight here as far as how the UGB works with Portland Metro and how we're looking at it, this year and looking to go out for an ask potentially very soon based on what we understand the growth of Sherwood's going to be. And so we had a housing needs analysis that really looked at what Sherwood is going to look like soon. And everybody wants to move to Sherwood. All the newspaper articles are great, but I think they at times are kind of it causes trouble for us because everybody hears about Sherwood and wants to live here. As I had kind of alluded to earlier, even with the Brookman area that we know of, coming in shortly, we're going to run out of residential land in about the next 4 to 10 years, and that's at a fairly conservative growth rate. So in growing the UGB and growing specifically the Sherwood West, we're going to try and meet those housing needs analysis. You're looking at about 500. The housing needs analysis has identified about a shortage of 500 houses for that area. And so if we don't grow in that area, what's going to happen is housing prices are going to go up. People are going to need somewhere to live. And so if we don't grow there, we're going to get some more infill in the city. So we're going to have developers buying up lots and putting in more houses on smaller lots. And I don't think that is the ideal look that people want to see of Sherwood. They don't want row houses throughout the city. So with the growth to the UGB and us controlling it, having a seat at the table with Metro to pitch what we want Sherwood to look at rather than having that dictated to us, I think it's really important that we move now. Thanks.
Mr. Mays, we'll throw the same thing at you. As we continue to grow and expand here in Sherwood, how do you see the UGB changing? And what challenges does that represent for us? And what is the lasting impact, positive and or negative, that you see it having on the city?
Great question. It is true that the report says that we do need some more homes in our 20-year supply. But we have time and we can pause so that we can understand truly what the community wants. If we did a 600-acre ask, and that was given by Metro, and there's no, I'm doubtful that Metro would support it. The conversations I've had in the region, some folks in the region were surprised that we submitted a letter of interest because of our political unrest last year or so, the issues with Brookman and the fact that nothing's still occurring down there, but the significant resistance to UGB expansion and the state law changing and giving it to the community even though they didn't want it. So 600 acres up to 15,000 residents, if you did that enough acreage, that's basically doubling the town. So if you double the town, what all do you need to do? It's a tremendous change. The potential infill, yes, there is the potential, but if the infill standards aren't what we want, we change them. If there's zoning changes by people on infill, they come to council and the council considers if they want to increase the zoning for a particular lot. So infill is a bit of a red herring in my opinion. If we're spending all this money and effort to find out what the community wants, I know there was efforts on Sherwood West independently, but if you're looking big picture, you're considering the impacts to fund services for that and how it looks. You're looking at all the costs associated with we'll need to expand the library, expand City Hall, expand Public Works, expand the police department, somehow fund the employees that we need to hire to service it all. And we just want to make sure that we're doing it right and doing it gradually. Once we put a request into Metro, it's opening the floodgates potentially.
Thank you,
yep.
Mr. Mays.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mayor, candidates for Mayor, Mr. Garland, candidate for Mayor, Mr. Mays. Ladies and gentlemen, I think our what's a good way to put it? Our candidates have done a nice job of sharing their insight into things that are important to all of us in the community. Can we have a nice round of applause for everybody that spent the time to come in and do this tonight, as well as our city councilman sitting right here as well? Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Also, a special thanks to Tom Ogden and Matthew Shantine for helping ask the questions tonight, for the City of Sherwood for allowing us this venue, and for the Sherwood High School Youth and Government for being here tonight, helping us choose the community question and just helping facilitate this evening. We at the Chamber hope this candidate forum gave you insight to our candidates and their views on some issues for our city. We appreciate all of you attending and those watching remotely. Just a little parting thought I wanted to kind of share with you this weekend. My son was home from college, and as he was running out the door, I hollered and said, I'm from Missouri, hollered and said, did you remember to vote? And he said, yes, Mom, it's on the counter, please drop it off for me. And then my daughter, who's a month and a half shy of being able to vote, she says, do I get a vote? And we reminded her she was short. And she's like, darn, I really wanted to vote. And may we all embrace that joy of being able to vote. And so please remember to drop off your vote. So thanks so much.
Mr. Chernenko said that the property should be sensibly developed. We agree, and you do too. That's why you did the Brookman concept plan. That guides urban development in this area.